Most people imagine retirement as a neat destination on a calendar. 65, maybe 62, possibly earlier if luck and savings allow. It's treated like a one-size-fits-all finish line where work stops and leisure begins. But that line is more of a cultural story than a universal truth. Reframing retirement means seeing it not as an age at which life ends and rest begins, but as a chapter that can start, pause, or even restart at many points. Retirement is a choice, not a deadline. This matters because the right retirement age carries powerful assumptions, that achievement and risk belong to youth, that financial security is the only path to dignity, and that new ventures are inherently age-restricted. Colonel Harland Sanders' life contradicts those assumptions. Broke and dependent on a small Social Security check, he set out across the country with a pressure cooker and a recipe, pitching door after door. He was rejected more than 1,000 times before someone finally bought into his chicken. His story reframes retirement not as surrender, but as a pivot point, an invitation to invent, to leverage experience, and to pursue passion when the stakes finally feel personal. Concrete examples reinforce this reframing. Consider Grandma Moses, who began painting in her late 70s and became a celebrated American folk artist. Or Ray Kroc, who joined McDonald's in his 50s and turned it into a global franchise. These people didn't start late because they failed earlier. They started late because timing and perspective aligned. The later-in-life start can carry advantages: deep industry knowledge, a vast network, emotional resilience, and often clearer priorities. There are opposing ideas to acknowledge. Critics argue that financial realities make late reinvention impractical for many, and that health or caretaking responsibilities can limit options. Those are real constraints. But the point is not to romanticize late starts as easy. It's to expand the imagination of what's possible and to highlight strategies that work. Incremental risk-taking, leveraging existing skills, and seeking small markets first. This reframing connects directly to the larger narrative. Sanders' persistence, the trial and error of his pitches, and the eventual creation of a global brand. It shows retirement as a launching pad rather than a landing zone, reminding listeners that timing is flexible, experience is an asset, and it is never too late to begin winning. Most people picture retirement as a quiet period of rest, but for Harland Sanders, age 65 marked a new beginning built on a long trail of setbacks. Born into poverty in Indiana, Sanders learned hard work early. He left home as a child to help support his family, holding a string of jobs from farmhand to streetcar conductor. Those early years taught him resilience and a knack for fixing problems, but they also exposed him to the instability of work that lacked long-term security. This shaping of character is central to understanding why his later failures didn't stop him. They had taught him to adapt. Significance here is simple. These setbacks created the pressure cooker of experience out of which his later success emerged. After marriage and a series of unstable ventures, running a ferry boat, a farm, a gas station, a tire business, and operating restaurants, Sanders never settled into one definitive career. Each venture added skills: cooking, management, salesmanship, and a sense for people's tastes. Yet alongside those skills came repeated failures. Businesses that failed during economic downturns, partnerships that dissolved, and opportunities that slipped away. By the time he reached his 60s, he was effectively at rock bottom, broke and dependent on a small Social Security check, literally scraping by. That low point matters because it framed his decision to reinvent himself rather than accept decline. Two concrete examples illustrate the depth of his setbacks. First, his gas station restaurant in Corbin, Kentucky, which began as a modest service, was forced to adapt when the state built a bypass around the town. Traffic dried up, and income plunged. Second, his earlier agricultural and sales endeavors failed to produce steady revenue, leaving him with little capital to fund future projects. These real-world blows made his later persistence all the more remarkable. Supporters argue that Sanders' life proves age is no barrier to entrepreneurship. Critics counter that his story is an outlier, a mix of grit, timing, and unique culinary talent that most cannot replicate. Challenges included limited savings, age discrimination, and fatigue. Alternative viewpoints note that not everyone can endure repeated rejection or sudden financial vulnerability in later life. Sanders' descent to rock bottom connects to the larger theme. The brink of retirement can be a launch pad rather than a finish line. His setbacks supplied the lessons, recipes, and resolve that fueled his reinvention, a direct bridge to the later chapters where persistence and a pressure cooker would rewrite his destiny. Most people, taught to accept the steady arc of life, picture retirement as a winding down, a quiet routine comforts, and the slow surrender of big ambitions. But Colonel Harland Sanders looked at that picture and saw a blank canvas. The decision to start over was not a sudden miracle. It was a deliberate choosing of hope over resignation. Here we define that choice. Hope as an active commitment to possibility, resignation as a passive acceptance of limits. Sanders's choice was neither naive nor reckless. It was a practical refusal to let age, poverty, or past setbacks determine his future. This moment matters because it reframes failure as a starting point rather than a final verdict. Losing money, selling his gas station, living on a meager Social Security check, these could have been reasons to stop. Instead, they became reasons to experiment. Choosing to start over is significant for anyone facing late-life transitions. It asserts that skills, stories, and recipes can gain value when coupled with persistence and a clear goal. For Sanders, the goal was simple and tangible: perfect a fried chicken recipe and find people willing to sell it. That clarity turned abstract hope into daily work. Two concrete examples show how this choice plays out. First, Sanders drove from state to state, cooking sample meals in a pressure cooker for skeptical restaurant owners. Each rejection was feedback. Adjust the pitch, refine the recipe, change the approach. Second, he developed a franchising model, an innovation that let others sell his chicken, multiplying his reach without requiring him to open countless stores. Both examples highlight different facets of starting over: the grind of direct selling and the strategy of scaling through partnerships. Opinions differ on whether such a restart is wise. Some argue late-life entrepreneurship risks financial insecurity and stress. Others point out that later-life ventures benefit from accumulated wisdom, networks, and credibility. Sanders's story supports the latter. His persistence turned repeated no's into a national brand. Challenges are real: ageism, limited capital, health concerns, but they don't nullify the choice. Connections to other parts of his journey are clear. His salesmanship, his willingness to accept feedback, and his inventive franchising all stem from that initial decision to choose hope. This is the moment when defeat could have been permanent, but instead became the first chapter of a comeback. They hit the road not as tourists, but as missionaries of a recipe. Colonel Harland Sanders, at an age when most people accept smaller routines and smaller incomes, turned his whole life into a mobile strategy session. The pressure cooker wasn't just cookware, it was a branding prop, a quality control tool, and a conversation starter. He cooked his chicken to prove consistency, then stood behind those pots and told his story. That combination of a clear strategy, relentless persistence, and a tangible symbol of his product is what made the journey more than a trip. It became a campaign. Strategy here meant careful simplicity. Sanders didn't open a chain overnight, he perfected a method that could be taught. The pressure cooker ensured uniformity of texture and flavor so that every restaurant owner he approached could taste a repeatable product. He sold the concept, not a menu item, a fry recipe, a cooking process, a brand he could license. That focus let him speak to business owners in practical terms: profit margin, customer satisfaction, ease of preparation. And it gave him credibility when words alone might have failed. Persistence was the engine. Rejected more than 1,000 times, Sanders treated each no as data, not defeat. He refined his pitch, adjusted how he approached kitchens, learned which owners valued consistency over novelty, and which markets were ready for fried chicken sold by a septuagenarian with a white suit. The road forced him to iterate quickly. Some owners wanted faster prep, others wanted less grease. He listened, adapted, and moved on. Over and over, he knocked on doors, cooked for skeptical strangers, and kept his conviction visible. That level of perseverance reframes failure as progress. The pressure cooker symbolized both a promise and a challenge. It was evidence that Sanders understood operational constraints. He could deliver taste and efficiency. Yet using it also invited skepticism from chefs who trusted traditional methods. Overcoming that required not only excellent cooking, but the softer skills of persuasion, storytelling, patience, and the dignity of a man who believed in his creation. This road trip linked directly to other elements of his later success: branding, franchising, and resilience, showing that a practical tool plus unshakable determination can rewrite expectations about age, risk, and the timelines for success.